so they're easier to read. We made some changes based on all that input. And then we had a second open forum this April as well. And that came up with our final draft subdivision regs, and then we had our hearing in June. And that's how we got here.
Yeah, so I'll add to that a little bit. Procedurally, so we have these proposed draft bylaws under this hearing tonight. The planning commission needs to have at least one public hearing for this sort of a process to go through. They did, that was June 4th of this year. The select board needs to have at least one hearing. You may decide to have more. If there's substantive changes made to them, then there should be, definitely there'll need to be at least a second hearing. The select board is enabled under state law to vote to adopt these things, but the select board could also choose to send it to town meeting to be adopted by Australian ballot. That's your choice. Do you want me to kind of go through a few highlights, or do you want me to just answer questions? Do you have a preference?
Maybe we get a few highlights.
A couple of highlights, okay. So, the planning commission is the board that prepares these documents. Usually, there's some exceptions to that, but that's what happened in this case. Through some legal advice we had through Vermont League of Cities and Towns, initially we were thinking the planning commission would review subdivision applications. They said, no, you really need this other board, and so this bylaw, its draft, would create a new development review board. We're working under the assumption that it's the same people, so the planning commission members would also basically serve as this development review board, and they would review any applications if this thing gets adopted. There would need to be the administrative officer. We talked in general terms about possibly that could be through our office, but we haven't worked out those details yet. If adopted, we'll figure it out. We were trying to keep things fairly simple, so lot line adjustments, such things that don't create a new lot, that's exempt. You don't need a permit for that. Minor subdivisions would be a total of 3 lots. So that would be like one existing lot creating 2 new lots. That would be a minor subdivision, and that would go through a relatively quick and fairly easy administrative review process to get a permit. Bigger stuff beyond that, 4 or more lots in total, would be a major subdivision, and that would go through this development review board if adopted. We built in a couple of other things to try to, again, make it a little bit easier. There's no full perimeter survey required for like really big lots, 50 acres or more. There's waivers that an applicant could request on a number of, basically any requirement in this thing. People could ask for a waiver, and so it would be up to the DRB to decide whether to grant those waivers. There'd have to be some good reason for it. I think I'll leave it at that. There's a lot of details in here. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Now, does the board usually, would it consist of like fire personnel or anything like that as well, since they should have a pretty good say and stuff like that? Or is that just part of this, the permit would be with having their input?
Yeah,
I don't know what most towns do. I mean, is it usually, I'm assuming it's mostly the planning commission would do the review board, but.
Yeah, usually it's just the board that makes the decision. There's a few aspects of here where, in terms of the road standards, in my opinion, we'd want to be talking to you, Rick, or Fawn in the highway department, and just make sure the driveway permits are in order and there's no concerns there. There's a part in here where, where a letter from the school or the fire chief or something like that could be evidence that they meet certain standards. Whether they're on the board is another question. Whether we have a department head type review process as part of this is also something we could discuss. It's not written into this.
Right. But it could be part of the applicant process and the application.
It could be, and for example, if it was just me serving as the administrative officer, I'd probably want to share the application with all the different department heads anyway, and
Right.
see if there's any comments. So that type of thing could be built into this.
Any questions from the board?
I do have maybe a couple more that, just for clarity, like a minor subdivision is a lot going, the original lot plus two more.
Right.
Would be considered minor, but if you have a right of way in that access, that would become a major subdivision, is that how I read that? Okay.
As written, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah,
How does a private road, because if you have 3 residents in private, it turns into now a private road, not.
my interpretation is a new private road would go through the major subdivision process just to make sure everything's in order and, access is important and just want to make sure all the paperwork looks good in that case, I would say.
Yeah. Can I ask, or maybe I can do it afterwards, it looked like there was a couple references to sections on page 4 that might be a typo. The 2.4 and the 2.5 and 2.6, I think should be 2.6 and 2.7.
Well, good catch. There could very well be some typos. I hope not, but there probably are, so we can correct those.
It was minor, but I didn't know if I was going to the wrong spot or.
I will double check, but yeah, there could be some typos in there, so if there are, sorry, we can fix those.
Well, if it's a typo, or if you left out a section, that's a whole nother ball.
I don't think we left anything out, Tim. What do you think? I think it's probably just a typo.
I think it's a typo.
I have to
I
look.
think it just should say 2.6 and 2.7 maybe, or.
It's 2.5.
Trying to read through my comments and see. I think you did a lot of work. And thank you, Planning Commission, for doing that. It was a lot of work to do this. Those were a few of the basic questions I had, for sure.
And I certainly don't want to speak for the planning commission, so feel free, planning commission, chime in.
Yeah. I think it's important to note that these subdivision regulations, they don't tell you what you can do. It's not zoning where, it doesn't tell you what type of use, commercial, how many houses you can, how many lots you can have. Basically, the regulations are to protect property values. There's folks in town that a lot of their income, their investments are into their houses. And I've seen projects where, you develop a new road, new houses, and you could change the drainage patterns where it could flood neighboring basements, things of that nature. Roads that are too steep. We are seeing an uptick in development, so I think it's important that we have these. They're basically general guidelines, general regulations that foster good engineering. That's it. That's all they are.
Most of the flat buildable land is not
That's
already
right.
built on.
And now that you can have, different types of septic systems, where before you had to build on land that could support a leach field. Now there's all sorts of pre-treatments, so we're seeing development, 25, 30 years ago in places that wouldn't have happened. And it's a big deal with drainage for sure, with all these storms we've had. And
Not recently. Not this year.
not this year.
So what's the next step?
So, to have the audience ask questions maybe? Or-
I just have a comment.
Sure.
When I first got on the planning commission, my first question was, well, have we looked at other towns that don't have zoning that have this enacted? Mount Holly is one of those towns, and so I reached out to the chair of the planning commission. They're in the process of revising theirs. A couple of things, he said, which we actually added the sketch plan review in here, which you're not gonna have to spend 10 grand to even bring your plan to the board, or however this is administrated. And the other thing he said was every application came with a lawsuit. So if this is enacted, I would probably up the budget for legal fees. And I also feel maybe, as much as I think it would be great to have you administrate it, I think this town is very unique. I think it should be kept either in-house somehow, or have a part-time person dedicated to administering the major plans.
The sketch feature is definitely nice.
Yeah.
Saves a lot of money.
Yes,
But that's just to start, because then eventually you have to have it surveyed and everything with it. So you're gonna spend it anyway.
well, it would at
It's
least.
not gonna save you anything.
No, but if you spend $10,000 to have it surveyed and you bring it to present it and everybody says, no, you can't do it that way, you gotta go back and spend the money all over again. So at least it's a good start.
Oh, for
You can keep making
projects.
sketches till you get to the point where everybody says, it looks good, let's see what it
Exactly.
formally looks like.
Exactly.
So it does save you that. And I'm assuming a lot of time.
Right, the subdivision process is probably the least expensive part of developing property. You have wastewater applications, surveys.
But the state requires that already. At least from what I was looking at it. So, that's already, you gotta do that whether you have regulations or not, when you subdivide.
Yeah, for wastewater.
Right.
That's all they look at,
And water supply.
the water
And water
supply.
supply. And they want, the.
Yeah. But that's all they look at. They don't look at road gradients or anything like that.
Oh,
They
right,
just
well,
look at
that's, yeah, right. That's what
Driveway access.
they do.
driveway access.
Well, the town,
That's regulated.
town does that, and the town should be taking care of driveway access.
We do access, but that's
So-
where we stop. That's where these take over.
I would hope that the board would put this to a vote and let the townspeople decide on it. Or, give good commentary if we need to take it back and make some adjustments. Because I feel it's too big of a decision to be had with this small group right here.
Yeah, I agree with you, it should go to the voters.
Commenting.
Town meeting, yes.
So I didn't see any fee schedule, so, that's like a big question mark, I guess.
The fee schedule, I guess, would cover any of the expense of
Yeah.
notification.
We looked at
They were
different
talking about
towns.
getting engineers and blah, 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 but.
Well, that's after the sketch plan review. And we did look at fee
Right.
schedules. We looked at different towns, and they're anywhere from, $200 to $300 a lot. Somewhere in that range.
For a lot, so you
Yeah.
just divide up you don't count the one that's existing. If you do 2 subdivisions, you
Right.
got 3, but you only
Yeah.
would charge for
The
2,
new ones,
the new one.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, we didn't dig into that. It was more of a select board decision, I think. We
Mhm.
decided, right, that you
Yeah.
would set the fee schedule and how the administration, whatever, you know, you're comfortable with, would work.
well, I hope that's figured out before it eventually comes to a vote, because that's something people, you know, might be a
I'm assuming-
determining factor for some people's vote. Yeah, I don't know, but-
I'm assuming we're gonna have one more public hearing anyways on this
Yes.
before.
And this is this out so that people can see it? The plan?
Yep, the plan's on the town's website, and we have copies here that are printed, so.
So people can get it, look at it?
Yeah.
So, do you wanna try another public hearing next month?
We can spread it out a little bit to get closer to voting,
But if we spread it out, then I wanna, my next thing was then we should look at fee schedules. So if we wanna wait or spread it out or wait till towards the end of the year, the beginning of the new year, let's have a meeting about the fee schedules or add it to our agenda for the next month
Mhm.
to review and add any fee schedules or at least come up with some ideas of fee schedules.
Right.
Then we'll be more prepared in December or January when we wanna have our second public hearing and people will be able to see that we're trying to finalize it. And I would like the board's input on it when we get it done. That looks good, or, you know, what you think, cause you're, I would assume, much more read into this now than we are.
So is there like an amendment process, or like I was looking on page 5, number 4, that you have to, you know, not only lay on the property lines, but you've got to include proposed restrictions and easements and something, covenants. If somebody subdivides maybe for, they think eventually kids or something might want to thing, but you don't know, and something doesn't get sold for 20 years, I mean, and then you want to put something on, how do you do that, or is there some amendment process for what do you do there?
There is, there's an amendment process, yes, and also, you know, some of these standards may not fit every project. So an applicant could say, you know, that's irrelevant for this project, I'd like a waiver, please. So that, number one, is a situation that could come up. They could amend down the road if stuff changes, that's certainly possible. And also bigger picture, these bylaws could get amended, you know, it's a living document. So if something doesn't work very well, we can always change it, you know, it takes a couple months, but that can always be amended as well.
But easements and rights of way are going to be present in the original deed.
Right, yeah, there may be certain things you can't
Right,
amend,
that's-
like an easement, but not
Mr. Berg?
easily.
Are these properties that are accessed by town roads or private roads, or does that matter?
Basically both, as written.
Okay, good to know, thank you.
We appreciate y'all coming out.
It's pretty hard to get a survey these days, isn't it? I mean, there's not
There
many
needs to be.
surveyors around, there seems to be
Very
less and
expensive.
So if
less.
there's somebody out there listening that wants to get
It's
into a
getting
trade.
more and
that's
more
not
costly.
possible.
Yeah, that's right,
100%.
that's, you know, those are,
Oh,
It's not easy.
Any other?
well,
My concern focuses on enforcement. We already have a considerable number of ordinances in this town, some of which are notoriously unenforced. And they need to be if you're talking about protecting property values in particular. There are now properties in this town, in the villages, that are uninsurable because the adjoining property has so much junk in it. I'd like you to pay some attention to that and figure out what sort of a legal fees budget you're gonna establish to cover what Maureen mentioned earlier about Mount Holly, that every one of these things has resulted in a legal challenge. It can get very, very costly quickly, unless you have lawyers in this community who are willing to donate their services. And they better be very competent, because my outside advice is that this is crowding the zoning line very, very closely, and in certain cases, stepping over the boundary. So be prepared, that's all I can say.
Any other comments? If not, we can close this hearing.